All right, Kristen, so today we're talking through, oftentimes we see practice, production, collections increase, right? We see owners reinvesting back in the business, trying to grow their practice, but that doesn't always lead to an increase in profitability. Talk through some of the common issues we see as practices are growing their top line. They're not necessarily seeing the bank account increase along with it.
Yeah, I think that's a super common problem. You immediately think because you have more production, you seem busier around the office, like that's immediately going to lead to more cash in your pocket and more net income. And that's just not the case. As you grow that collections, other things grow along with that. You know, how are you getting to that higher collections number? Well, you're having to have more people work. That means you're paying more people. So your expenses grow with that top line. It's very hard to grow top line collections without growing expenses as well.
Yeah. I think one of the most common ones or situations I see, especially on the group side, I know you guys see it on the solo side every once in a while, but you're starting to take that mindset shift going from clinical worker to CEO, and so I'm going to go bring in my first associate to start building out a model where I have associates working for me. And oftentimes you'll see that top line number stay maybe stagnant, maybe grow a little bit as you bring an associate in and you start to scale back. What's the one big difference that we run into? Well, we're paying that associate, 30 to 35% of production collections, whatever the case may be. And, you may not have been paying yourself as the owner a true normalized compensation. And so to get that same production, we're seeing a much higher expense than what we saw previously.
For sure. When you first add that associate, a lot of times as an owner, you have to be willing to take a little bit of a pay cut just to make sure that's all going to make sense on the books until it's all normalized out and everybody's producing, what they should as a doctor. And then you see that top line really growing. That's when you can go back to your normal salary range and things like that.
Yeah, 100%. A couple other expense items we see trying to grow a practice. We see marketing spend increase, maybe facility increase as we're growing and expanding a location. Oftentimes when that happens, right, P&L looks okay, but my cash hasn't increased. Why? Well, if we take out a big loan to buy a new building or do a big build out, that's going to be off the P&L. And so net income might look a little bit better, but we've got cash going out the door on that debt payment. So really, really common issue that we see. Walk us through situations where we are or have the ability to grow top line and we are increasing our margin. What is often happening in those situations?
Yeah, I would say, you have a really productive staff, everybody's pulling their weight. You're not increasing any of your other expenses at the same time. As we grow our practice, our hope is that our fixed expenses aren't changing that much. And so that's where we're really capitalizing and building that net income is those kind of expenses aren't growing. Your rent doesn't grow necessarily just because you added another doctor or you're growing that top line. Your telephone bill, for example, that's not going to change, So that is one place where you can kind of save a little bit and add to that bottom line too.
Yeah, absolutely. I think that's one of the big common misconceptions is I'm going to reinvest back in the business and I'm automatically going to see that profitability grow. That's not always the case, right? Where we see true margin grow is when we can see a higher output with what we're pouring in. Currently not saying that reinvesting back in the business is bad by adding staff members, more productive staff members. But when you're doing that, it is often going to take some time to get us back up to where we want to be from a margin perspective.
Yeah, there's always an ebb and flow. You have to be willing to put a little bit more into the business and then wait a few months to see those rewards. And it's just a constant cycle of up and down. That's just kind of what it takes when you own a business.
Yeah,